Hi, I'm Dr. Peace. Welcome to my office hours. My guest today is Skaie, who's a former student of mine, and I invited her here today to talk about that graduate school experience and what's it like in the real world once you're out and about. So, welcome to the podcast, Skaie, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Cool. When did you actually graduate?
I've graduated, yes, 2 years ago, got my license pretty soon after. So I've been working as a therapist at an outpatient. Well, started working with teenagers at a school-based program and then moved into outpatient therapy and have been there for about a year now.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what's it like in the real world? Tell the listeners what it's really like.
It's very different. A lot of the theories, a lot of the things that we learn are not as translatable as into the real world. Like everything sounds sunshines and rainbows, very straightforward, but once we actually get to work with, real humans, you're often kind of like, oh my God, this is not at all what I practiced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you.
And into a lot of like a lot of you get a lot of that imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not sure that I'm doing this correctly. I was told that I have to follow these protocols and do this therapeutic style and this and that, and it's like none of that fits into a perfect neat little box.
No, it does not. And so you feel like that in your classes, especially I'm thinking of like when we take practice classes when we're nearing the end of a graduate program, do you feel like you were you able to have conversations that said, now remember, this is not real life? No?
No, not really. I know that easily I'm not saying it because you're the one I'm talking to, but
Okay.
easily the best class I did have was your class because it was
Okay.
so much more realistic. We got to actually break down and kind of talk things through with actual, not necessarily actual clients, but our actual experiences as, working professionals while doing grad school. It was really helpful. And, you were probably one of the only professors that was like, not necessarily curriculum be damned, but just like let's make it real. And that was super helpful. That was probably the only time I encountered like, hey, just a heads up, it's probably not gonna be like this in real life.
And that's why I started the podcast
hmm
because people need to hear, especially, I just hope there are at least some educators that tune in
hmm
because people need to hear what students like you have to say about I the textbook and the theories and all that are wonderful to lay a foundation.
hmm
However, by the time you get to me, by the time you get to graduate school, it's very important that you start thinking about what it's really like.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I don't know if we did this in your class, but I think we probably did because we always take a look at policy.
hmm
And policies and laws are written to make it sound like we're going to take this money and we're going to help these people. We have
hmm
these plans. And it just rarely is the implementation of a policy
hmm
look a lot like what I think the writers of policy intend. There's just
hmm
a breakdown there, and we
For
need to
sure.
be aware of that.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in the field that there just isn't a fix for? There's no neat textbook answer or no intervention, evidence supported or evidence-based intervention that actually works. What kind of things are you seeing?
I think that s- I don't know if this is going to directly answer your question, but I think that one of the
That's
things that
okay.
I'm seeing is how much these policies have forgotten that we're human. It's very directed, and not that it shouldn't be, but it's very directed to the client. And while that is very important because we want to be able to serve the client to the best of our abilities, they forgot that we're also human in the process. And so it's very written to kind of leave us in the backside and forget. And now we're kind of set in this situation of, okay, well, now I'm in a spot, or I'm, overwhelmed, or I'm burnt out, or I'm this, or I'm that. And all of the policies just say, okay, well, is the client in mind? One of the biggest things is that I have a couple of LSWs that I work with, and we're all kind of just like, what do we do? Like, especially most of us right now, we're all working. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm working 40 hours a week of with direct one-on-one client to client contact. And that is a lot. That is a lot. Emotionally, it's a lot with burnout, and we don't of pay. I don't really have a wiggle room, because otherwise it's a fee for service model. So it's either I work or I don't get paid. And when you can't afford to not get paid, you're kind of in this position where you kind of screwed. So, and there's not a lot of policy in there to help with that.
So there's no time built in for like we used to call it a counselor's hour.
Hmm.
And so you had 50 minutes of face-to-face time and then 10 minutes to write up your notes, which is also not realistic.
Right.
But at least they built in something. You don't have anything like that.
Oh, I'm fairly efficient when it comes to my notes. Like, I've somehow managed to make it work where I'm talking and typing at the same time. So my notes are pretty much done. And yes, we do get a little bit of we have, we do a 53-minute session. So we get 7 minutes. And that's how that works. But in between that, if by chance, for any reason, technology wise, whatever it is, we have any, what's it called? We get behind on our notes or anything like that. We don't really have wiggle room to catch up. It's either we use our own PTO or we don't get paid to catch up on our notes and call it a day. So,
53 minutes kind of makes my stomach sink.
mhm.
Well, I wonder what that's based on, insurance
I
requirements?
think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonder
Mhm.
how they came up with 53.
I could not tell you. They
Are
were told.
you are you in person or online?
Both. Both.
Both. Okay.
I have that is one of the things. I do have a lot of flexibility in terms of whether, well, I shouldn't say a lot of flexibility, but some flexibility in terms of that hybrid model. Most clients right now want to be in person, but for my sake, I decided recently to switch to 3 days virtual and 2 days in person.
What made you do that switch?
Mainly just the flexibility of having some more time at home. So, like, when, for example, if I do schedule myself an hour that I'm choosing for myself not to get paid, whatever it is, I'm still at home and I can just leave my office and breathe and just work out if I want to, just go outside to my porch if I need to, like, whatever it is. I have that flexibility, which at the office that I work at don't really have that. Not necessarily that option, but like, it's not as comforting. It's just I'm trying to save money on gas, so to be fair.
Boy,
Right.
you're bringing up so many good points. I kind of wish this were a live session where people could call in because
Right.
I know that there are so many people that can relate to this. That might be a season 2 thing that I'll have you back and we'll have a call in because what you're describing is a person who has spent a lot of money and time to
Mhm.
get a graduate level degree and to
Mhm.
become licensed. And yet
Mhm.
you're still, like you say, you're still a person with the light bill to pay.
Mhm.
And
And it's been interesting because my partner with the administration that's been happening, and I won't go too political with it, but like, um
we can go
we
blue.
okay. Well, with everything that's been going on, with my partner was a government worker, but that has changed, and so now it's pretty much a single income household. And even though there's things happening and we're doing things and we're doing for the most part well, it put a moment of, oh, okay, so I'm happy to do the single income, but this field that we're in isn't really conducive to that. And that's been the biggest thing, the biggest conversation of, I dislike the fact that every time the conversation goes, oh, you go into this field, it's you go into this field because you like it, not because you want to be paid. And it's like, no, you can do both. We can do both.
Yes, that's such a valid point. I was just sitting here thinking it's hard to concentrate on a client's
Mm-hmm.
need for specific resources if you're also lacking in
Mm-hmm.
resources because of,
Mm-hmm.
Maslow's whole hierarchy of needs thing. You
Mm-hmm.
got to have the place to live, you got to have the food, you got to have basic needs met
Mm-hmm.
before you can actually concentrate on self-actualization.
Yeah. And that always
So
brings me back to that saying of like you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's like, sure, who else is pouring into the cup though?
So as we're thinking about the whole idea of becoming a social worker, and like you said, it isn't counterintuitive to say you can love the work and still want to get paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
The the fact that we are a field of helping professionals, it's just very confusing to think that we don't pay well. Are
Mm-hmm.
there any, are you aware of any jobs in social work that, I know child welfare, if you work for a
Mm-hmm.
governmental agency, it can pay pretty good.
The main one that I've heard from any of my colleagues have been private practice right now. And then, there was conversations about potentially joining the military as like an officer, and that could potentially give enough at least, right? That's a whole different conversation of what that entails of what you might be sacrificing, right?
I know with private practice, what I had a private practice for a few
Mm-hmm.
years, and the insurance was just a nightmare. It was
Right.
either you cater only to people with money
Mm-hmm.
and don't take insurance,
Mm-hmm.
or you have to learn to take things like Medicaid or whatever the uh,
Right.
governmental insurance is. And it's not pleasant to try to
Right.
figure all that out in addition to helping people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been some places I haven't really had a chance because I'm close to getting my LC. I have in September I'll be eligible to take my exam. But I've been doing some research here and there on what like private practice could be like. And there are some websites now that help with all of that, like nitty gritty, getting cleared for getting all the panels done for insurance and all that stuff. So that's helpful. Now I haven't used it, so I don't know if I can speak. I can't speak to how well they do.
When I was in private practice, I started out just doing DUI evaluations. And
Mm,
believe me, there is money in that.
mm,
But I didn't really feel like I was doing the work, the social
mm-hmm,
work. It was,
mm-hmm.
yeah, people aren't honest when they're getting
Yeah,
DUI
of course.
evaluations. So it's difficult to offer help when
Mm-hmm.
people are like, have two beers a week is what I have. So,
Yeah.
I quickly, or before very long, I transitioned over trying to do more therapeutic work with children and adolescents.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really a challenge to be able to pay the bills. But I think it's
Right.
equally as hard when, like you're saying, if you work for someone else, then they're dictating 53 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you monitored?
Um, if I am, I haven't been really been indicated such,
Do
but
you
I'm
use that
assuming.
as more of a guideline, or do you really stick to the 53 minutes, set a timer, and we're done?
So for me, as long as the client is going and we have something to talk about, yeah, I follow with the 53 minutes. If the client is like, oh, I need to cut it short, then that's out of my hands at that point. But if I'm the one dictating how long, yeah, I stick to 53 minutes because I don't want to run into any issues.
That makes sense. Do you know how much psychiatrists get paid? I remember this used to just cross me when I was in the field.
Probably a lot more than we do.
Yeah, it's unreal. It's unreal. They're doctors,
Yeah.
so they get paid. But
But
yeah,
the
it's
thing I've
just
I've heard is that nowadays they're not really trying to hire psychiatrists. They're trying to hire LCSWs because they can get away with paying us less. I was considering going in for my doctorate, and then I was like, I don't know that that makes sense right now.
I think the only way I don't think a doctor of social work, it's when
Hmm.
it's that MD behind your
Hmm.
name. The
Hmm.
PhD is okay if you want to
Right.
teach. We're
Hmm.
here to learn so that you can help people.
Hmm.
But if in helping people, you're hurting yourself, wow, what a
Hmm.
conundrum.
Right. And I mean, to bring it back to school, it's like even that school process was a little telling as to how things were going to go in the real world towards the end, because I was put into a position which I'm taking it as a blessing in disguise, but was put into a spot where I had to take a leave of absence, not necessarily by choice, but because the ball was dropped a little bit. But in that same process, my mom did get, she's fine now, but she got diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I was able to take that time to help her, you know? So that's why I'm taking it as a blessing in disguise. But that was a very frustrating point because I ended up having to graduate later than planned. I
Do you
would have
mind
graduated like
sharing how does it come about that someone would tell you you had to take a leave of absence rather than your choice?
so what happened was the real world happened. I was working while doing school and I was in the middle of my practice semester. And things happened at that job and I ended up having to leave said job. And because I had to leave said job, I had to find a whole new job that would be able to serve as a practicum place
Mhm.
or field placement. And I did manage to find a place because I did not receive help as to any all of the options that I was being sent were only non-paid options, which could not do. So I ended up having to find for myself, and I did find a place. But and when I did, I sent immediately sent the documentations. I didn't hear back till about like 2 weeks later. By the time I heard back, they're like, "Oh yeah, you wouldn't be able to enroll into the classes in time. You would have to either start the classes 2 weeks late or you would have to do your last semester first." Like it was a very convoluted situation, or you just take a leave of absence. So it was kind of like a, you either set yourself up for failure or you take a leave of absence situation. So then,
Did you feel supported?
oh no,
No.
no, not at all. It was a very matter of fact, like, here are your options, that's all you got, even though you did all this work. Have fun.
Were you able to tell folks that were involved in that like, hey, this doesn't feel good?
I tend to be fairly outspoken. I don't recall that I did. I probably didn't because I was very upset. And I do not like to lead with my emotions when it comes to like voicing, advocating for myself. So I probably, in that sense, decided to keep that one to myself because it would not have been professional.
Whole field placement process is quite painful for students.
Hmm.
Like you said, most students find themselves in a position where it has to be unpaid, and
There were
so many people
several
that
there were several of my peers that had a really really hard time with the field placement part. There was several who ended up having to leave or take a leave of absence as well because they couldn't find a field placement in their area. And most of the time during that time, our advisors were unresponsive, or they would reply weeks later and without any actual solution as a reply. And it was really, really difficult and really, really discouraging. I know several of my peers, not several, a couple of my peers that did ended up completely dropping out of the program because they were just so discouraged by the lack of support.
and
And
from a professor standpoint, I have taught those classes and tried to advocate for students and
mhm,
really been you see, not rudely or not meanly, but
mhm,
very sternly told that that's not your job. You
mhm.
know, you're the professor for this course. You are not the student advisor. You are not the field placement liaison. So
Yeah, and
a,
and
a
and we did
lot of, a
have,
lot of, I think the people that would want to help you, their hands are tied. And I'm sure you
right,
feel that sometimes in the social work field that the things you want to do for clients, you can't.
right, right. I think that that's Very true. Like we have, and in this, because where I'm currently working, we do have like management that tries for us to advocate for us, but they're met with, the bureaucratics, whatever it is, and are told one thing, may not be told the correct thing. They try to advocate, and then just I can see the and this happened with school as well. We had some professors that did try to advocate for us, and we saw that same disappointment from our professors because they're like, our hands are tied. We can't do anything. And we hear you, but we can't do anything either. And that's the same thing that I see happening even where I'm working. Like they're trying to hear us. It's just that they have no power. They're not being heard. So they end up in the spot where they're being met with the frustration because they're the middle management and they have to front brunt take the brunt of the frustration from us, right? And it's hard all around for sure.
In those macro level decisions,
Hmm.
which are what, we always talk about those levels of social work. And
Hmm.
I was always drawn to micro level work.
Mm.
I like to work one-on-one with clients.
Yeah.
But if you're in that position, what you're describing is probably the most heartbreaking aspect of it, because the people making the decisions at that macro level, what I saw in specifically in child welfare, what I saw was that once people went from direct service worker to supervisor to administrator,
Hmm.
when that once the supervisor, they were still in touch.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
once they got to administration level, it was like, it's by the book. We have to do this, all the
Jeez.
T's and dot all the I's.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because once you're an administrator, that's your job. So
Hmm.
how do we do that, Skaie? How do we manage that? Here we are with the client, knowing what the client needs, but this other person who's actually in charge of making decisions is pretty far removed from that and is trying to meet all the laws and policies and all that stuff. What in the world do you do?
I was thinking of like the thought has bounced in my head about and I've done some looking on unionizing, right? Unionizing social workers. Um and the mental health field all around, but I feel like that's a really hard thing to not only get people behind because everyone's scared of losing their jobs, understandably. So am I. And so I I was trying to see if what that would look like, how could that benefit anyone? I'm well underqualified for that, so it's not something that you know, people have lost their jobs for trying to unionize. So it's like, mm.
It's true. And the current administration is saying that social work is not even a profession.
Right, right.
So, boy, does that ever take on a whole new
It's like
meaning.
you're trying to put out a fire while also in flames
Good
yourself.
way to word it.
Yeah, and it's
You're in
really
the
hard.
middle of the battle, and it's hard to negotiate a peace treaty when you're the one. Yeah, interesting.
And I mean, I tend to be very I mean, I probably am pretty unorthodox with how I operate in therapy, but sometimes I'm very straightforward with my clients. I know that there's this whole conversation about self-disclosure and whether you should or should not do it. I sometimes I mean, obviously I don't tell my clients my life story, but I do self-disclose, like, especially like, listen, I'm having a day. So if my face is doing something, if, I'm a little bit airheaded or out of a little bit distracted, like, please know it's not you. I become human to my clients, right? And my clients have at least told me, I love that you do that because it reminds me that even though you're, the professional here, you're still human and you're not everything's perfect. And so that's been really comforting, at least for me as a
Yes,
therapist.
yes, 1,000 times yes. And it's what I face as an educator. You said it early on in this interview. I loved your class because you kind of broke the rules a little. We're kind of outside of the box. And it's the same thing what you're describing in therapy. My husband always says, it's okay to step outside the box. Just be prepared for the consequences of that
Mhm.
decision. And it's true. So if you decide that you want to do therapy in a way that is human to human interaction, or you
Mhm.
want to teach a class that's human to human and sort of try to break free of some of those bonds of bureaucracy, you can get your ass in a lot of trouble,
Mhm.
Sky.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Because
Um,
someone somewhere decided how it should be done. And
right.
so the rules were made, and helping people, I don't know, sometimes I think helping people is not the primary goal for, I think it is for most direct service workers, I
Mhm.
feel that way, or like people in my role as an educator. But there are too many people higher up the chain that it's like, I don't know what the hell their goal is.
Right. Right. I think that I can't speak specifically to, our CEO. I'm honestly haven't don't know too much about him. I know that there's a lot of companies out there that, the higher ups aren't even part of, mental health professionals. And I'm like, how does that make sense? How do you not know what it's like to be here? And you just run a company that's supposed to be for mental health. It's just completely, it's very backwards.
And look at the example we have, and I am going to get political. Our current director of health and human services doesn't know shit about health and
Right.
humanity, has no background in that whatsoever. Our current director of the Department of Education, or secretary, or whatever the hell you call her, Linda McMahon, is she just seems to have had very little education, if any.
Hmm.
So we're seeing that if you have money and power, then you can put people in positions where maybe they don't
Don't
necessarily
belong.
belong. And
Right.
I don't think that's just in government. I
Hmm.
think that's
Hmm.
in a lot of places.
And it's so there's yeah, and I feel like I see that a lot in even in our field, even with like, you know, down here in the micro level, like there are a lot of people who are hired who probably aren't don't have the heart in it, right? And maybe they just because they get hired just because they're willing to take the pay, right? And to an extent, yes, this field can be learned and you don't necessarily have to have the heart to start, but you have to have a heart. And so if you don't, a lot of people I've run into a lot of clients who have said, "Oh, I've had horrible therapists." And I'm like, "Okay, so there's probably a couple of reasons there, but and then there's also the clients, not the clients, the therapists who have come in with a lot of heart and have gotten very jaded because of all the bureaucracy and all the things that have gone against, and it's really hard to balance that and be there for a client who's going through it and who might be having similar situations to what you're having. And it's hard to go through. I've had some, and I use this as humor mostly, but I've had clients who will say like, "Hey, I just don't know how to do some X, Y, and Z," and it's something that I might not know how to deal with. And I'm like, "All right, you let me know when you figure that out because I don't know yet."
Yes.
But
Yes.
but sometimes there's a lot of truth behind that because I'm like, I don't know how to help here.
We don't know everything. I think
Right.
it's that human interaction. We know research tells us beyond a
Hmm.
shadow of a doubt that it is the relationship between the therapist and the client is what makes therapy work.
Right.
It's not some fancy theory. It's not some particular intervention strategy that someone came up with, because you can try one intervention works with one person, you try it with the next person, it doesn't. But if you're able to show that you have compassion and curiosity for the client, you can at least feel like you're. I used to say when I worked for the Department of Children and Family Services, I might be the only person who interacts with this person today and shows them the respect and dignity that they deserve. Because
Right.
people living in poverty, people who mistreat their children for a variety of reasons,
Hmm.
are looked down upon. There's a
Hmm.
stigma attached to that. And if
Hmm.
you just treat people with respect and for their humanity, for God's sake, even if they've done
Hmm.
horrible things, and that's not always easy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of the I probably wouldn't call myself rare, but one of the few that does want to work within the criminal justice system and do like work with, even I don't know what the correct term is for this, but like the criminally insane in that population. Um and it's always been a desire of mine, and I have some colleagues who have gone into inpatient, not inpatient, outpatient along with me, and they're like, I used to want to do that. I don't know that I want to do that anymore. And I'm like, no, 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 I do. It still makes me shiny eyed. Please let me. um
All hard because human behavior is unpredictable and very
mhm,
complex. And so our best efforts sometimes just don't work. But putting yourself out there and saying,
mhm,
I'll stand in this space with you and
mhm.
let you just work through it. I don't know. I think that's meaningful. And the fact that it's not valued enough to pay people a living wage for it sort of just makes me sad. I
Yeah.
could say angry, but I'm going to stick with sad for today. Depends on the mood I'm in, Sky, whether
Fair.
or not I decide that.
I'm both. I'm both.
Yeah,
Sad
yeah,
and a little angry. I think we can be both. Um,
it's
but
true.
it's heartbreaking because you'll see a lot of people who are really good at what they do come into this field and then have to become not good at what they do in order to survive. And it's really hard.
It is. What would you say to encourage people who are just now graduating and, or maybe they're just in their last year of grad school? What would you say to encourage them?
Sure. I think that if there's anything I wanted to hear when I was graduating was make sure you fight for what you are worth, is to start by advocating for yourself from the get-go. I definitely just accepted for it for what it was and have started to really start pushing and advocating and causing a fuss and being annoying and whatever it is that the higher ups don't necessarily love, but you have to. Don't be afraid to start advocating for yourself from day one. I think that's what I would say.
Even though because you said this at the beginning of our conversation, is that you stand to sometimes lose your livelihood
Mhm.
if you begin to advocate for yourself. You'd say take the risk.
I'd say there are ways to advocate for yourself that doesn't necessarily have to put your livelihood in danger. You can do so professionally, right? You can do so in, do it in a way that's smart, but you should still advocate for yourself because if you never do, then no one's ever going to try to do it for you. As
Here's a
morbid,
big
as sad as that might sound.
here's a big question. If you had to do over again, would you still get your master's degree? Would you still put all that into it? Your hesitation speaks volumes, my dear.
I I like what I do. Do what I honestly, if I could do something else, if I could go back in time and do something else, I probably would have tried something else. Yeah.
I've threatened because I have a bachelor's in social work and a master's in social work. My PhD is in educational psychology. But what I really love is the legal system. So I've threatened to go to law school. And my husband's like, no more degrees. We are not. But I still can, it doesn't mean I can't learn more about that
Sure.
and still enjoy that. But
Hmm.
the fact that we have to pay so much money to get those letters that say now you can work for peanuts just
Yep.
doesn't it seem just so
I it's so frustrating.
oh,
The amount of student loans that I now have, I could have bought a whole little house for it. And there is very little that's helping us to pay that back and to deal with that part. I can go into that for forever now, but that's been really difficult as well. It's like you go into this, do all this, and then if you want to continue to advance and you have to do CD credits and your licensure, that costs a little, probably a small, a pinky or not a pinky, a whole finger or a limb in itself. Like the whole relationship process, like it's not something anyone really tells you about either. that you're going to have to pay a lot more after the fact too. I had to get my I not had to. I wanted to get a trained and I did get trained in EMDR, but that was itself a lot of money. So it's like regardless of where you're going to go, if you want to do different therapy modalities, if you want to learn more, if you want to do more, you're going to find a paywall there. If you want to get your licensing, you're going to find a paywall there. The one thing that's been frustrating is that I got my LSW in September and the renewal is in August for this year. And I take my LCSW exam in September. So I'm going to have to pay for renewal and then pay for my LCSW.
It's just insanity. It really is. The fact that you have to pay to take continuing education when the goal is that it will improve your professional skills to better be able to help people. It's not like we're saying, if I take this class, I'll make more money. No. If I take this class, I can enhance my skills in my professional self. That
And
should be free. My God,
and
that should be free.
it's on obligation. It's mandatory because in order for you to maintain your
Yes.
license,
Yes.
you have to
Yes.
do these things too.
Yes. Yes.
So you could choose if you really didn't want to advance your education, you could have chosen to not have to pay for it, but we literally don't have a choice either.
You're right. But it's still though, even though it's mandatory. Why? Because you need to keep up to date on what the current
Right.
research says and how to do your job better. So I don't think surely the people at Google having to pay for training to get, I wonder, that's a
Right.
good research question. So are people who are in a more of a for-profit business type atmosphere, do they have to pay to keep getting better? Just seems like nurses although nurses, wow, they get paid pretty good.
Yeah. But they also are sacrificing a lot.
It is true. It is
Yeah.
true, but at least they get paid for that.
Yeah,
You're
that's true.
sacrificing a lot. I mean, 40 hours of client face to face is just mind blowing.
Yeah. It's been tough. I think I don't know, I can't speak on any of the other clinicians in my practice, but I know at least with the colleagues that I'm close with, anytime I mention how many hours I'm working, they're like, "Are you insane?" I'm like, "No, I'm in need. I don't have an option here." And it's hard, and luckily I do still really enjoy what I do, and I have really great clients and do really great work with my clients, but sometimes I'm like, "I'm tired."
Course you are. Because like you said, I mean, we're humans first. It's just a tragedy. I don't want to end on that note. So I'm going to ask you one question that's a little bit more, hopefully lighter, to end our time together. So if there were one thing that you would want just the general public to know about being a social worker, what would you tell them? What would you want them to understand? Because we do get a bad rap, whether
Yeah,
you're doing therapy or child welfare or human services, where you're dealing with people that need public assistance, all those kind of things. Social workers are sometimes seen as the persnickety old ladies that go in and tell everybody what to do. What would
right.
you want people to think of when they think of a social worker like you?
I think I would want them to think that, social workers are in it because they genuinely do care and they want the best for everyone they come in contact with. I mean, if it's any telling at all, we're definitely not being paid for what we're worth. So most of the time we're in there underpaid and we're still showing up every day. And we will continue to because that's just who we are. And we want to do good. And even if that means that you see us on a really bad day, doesn't mean we're out to work against you. We're just trying to work with you to the best of our ability.
Thank you. I'm so proud that you were in one of my classes and that our paths crossed. And I want to thank you again for coming today and talking with me. Peace.